End of an era, dawn of a new beginning. The UK prepares to leave the European Union. Britain scrambles for new trade deals with the US as it seeks a new role on the global stage. Welcome to World Business Report. I'm Michelle Fleury in New York, and we can cross now to some live pictures from Brussels. They are getting ready to lower the Union flag in a few minutes' time, which is flying outside the office of the UK's permanent representation to the EU. You can see they've taken it in the window there. That is the flag that basically has been flying outside EU buildings, but no more. It includes the Commission, where it flies alongside the flags of the other 27 member states. A real sort of moment in marking what is a huge departure for the United Kingdom and a big change in direction. Now, the lowering of the Union Jack, the British flag, marks, well, not just a momentous change in UK life for half a century, it also ends its 47-year membership of the European Union, and it swaps access to arguably the biggest trading bloc in the world for the opportunity and uncertainty of negotiating its own trading relationships with the rest of the world. Former World Trade Organization chief and EU Trade Commissioner Pascal Lamy says striking a new trade deal with the European Union will be crucial to all future trade relationships for the UK.
There's one thing first before UK negotiating with others, US, Japan, India, whatever. They will want to know what is the trade relationship with the European Union. And the relationship with the European Union is a very new category of relationship. Usually trade agreements, trade negotiations are about increasing market access, improving the level playing field. This time it's going to be about de-level the playing field.
Pascal Lamy there. Well, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he hopes to have a new post-Brexit trade deal with the UK signed by the end of this year. But Gordon, US Director of the Transatlantic Business Council, joins us now from our studio in Washington and hopefully can talk us through sort of some of the real key issues facing a post-Brexit Britain. Look, a number of your members have viewed investment in the UK as a gateway to the European Union. How important is getting that UK-EU trade deal right for them?
Well, it's going to be very important. But our members have a footprint both in Europe and in the United States. So, you know, there's mutual interest in getting this thing done. But when you talk about trade, you really have to think about it in two buckets. You know, one bucket is services and the other bucket is goods. In the services area, particularly in those highly regulated services like banking and insurance, U.S.-based companies are really going to have to be very careful to understand the regulations and how they can sync up between the EU and the UK. In terms of the sort of the bucket of goods, that's really more logistics, and it's about the obligations that they'll meet at the borders and how to meet those. But either way, the uncertainty is a problem, and certainly there's going to be a long-term cost.
Uncertainty you mentioned there, presumably that doesn't end today. I mean, that carries on as these trade negotiations are being hammered out and as the regulations and new rules are being worked out.
There's going to be uncertainty until the ink is dry.
Right. Regulations are often a big stumbling point. We've heard a lot in the UK concerns about food standards, concerns about American chemical industry seeking greater access to the UK, and again, issues there over pricing and over regulation. I mean, how big a stumbling block do you think that will be ultimately for any deal between the US and the UK?
Well, any major trade agreement is a big deal, and it's going to be tough. There's going to be, each side will have their wants, and then they'll have their needs. There'll probably be some raised voices, before this is over with for purposes of posturing, but it simply has to get done. It's going to be too important to the economies of both, the UK and the US.
Clearly, it's hugely important to the UK, and Boris Johnson has made that very clear. Donald Trump making positive noises. You've got the Secretary of State making positive statements that they want to get a deal done quickly with the UK. But isn't the reality that the EU market, which is substantially bigger, in real terms, has to be a higher priority for the United States?
Well, I think they're going to have to be done in parallel. You can't close an agreement with the UK until it's closed its agreement with the EU. But we can be working in parallel. There's already been discussions, preliminary discussions with the UK and here in the administration here. So, you know, you're going to have to walk and chew gum at the same time.
I was going to say that was exactly the expression I was thinking of. Bart, thank you so much for joining us from Washington today.
Good to be with you.
Well, it may not have the financial clout of the banking sector or manufacturing, but you will be hearing a lot more about Britain's fishing industry in the coming months. The EU has made it clear that any trade deal must include an agreement on fishing access to British waters, and that it should be reached by the beginning of July. British fishermen in Brixham, Devon, fear that their interests will be sacrificed to get a deal with the EU.
You have to be optimistic to be a fisherman. You'd never leave the harbour if you weren't optimistic. My name is Andy McLeod. I'm skipper owner of the Van Dyke. Been fishing for 35 years. My father owned the boats, passed them on to me. I have my son working with me, so it's a generational family thing. You know, it's probably seen as a bit of a romantic life being a fisherman. It's actually very hard work, and you're away from your families and you're home for days on end. I voted to leave because we wanted to regain some more control over our waters and have a bigger share of the quota. The French get 84% of the channel cod, the UK gets 9%, which, you know, doesn't strike me as being particularly fair. You'd like to think the government would turn around, well, OK, if you're going to start putting tariffs on our fish, we'll put tariffs on all the German and French cars and French wine and cheese. The biggest fear is fishing will be used as a bargaining chip and we're just pawns to be sacrificed for the greater good of the country. If we don't get continued reasonable fishing, then you're going to end up with a lot of coastal towns becoming ghost towns. Because basically, like in Brixham, you've got fishing and tourism, and that's it. So if there's no fishing, you've only got tourism, and a lot of tourists come to Brixham to see fishing boats.
The fears they're being expressed by fishermen in Devon. Well, in other news, we can talk about the coronavirus, and airlines are suspending flights to China in the wake of the new coronavirus outbreak. The latest is Delta Airlines, which will temporarily suspend all remaining US-China flights after the US State Department elevated a travel advisory over concerns about the virus. Facebook says it will remove postings which include misinformation about the deadly coronavirus outbreak. That includes harmful conspiracy theories, fake cures, or incorrect information about available health resources. So far, 213 people have died in China from the disease. And a quick look at the markets before we go. As you can see, sharp sell-off there on the US markets. A lot of that driven by the earnings season. We've seen a big sell-off, particularly amongst energy companies, Exxon leading the way down. And that is all we have time for. You can always get in touch with us and the team on Twitter. For now, though, goodbye.